No, we're doing just paper today. Okay. Here. You guys. 1, 2, 3. Here's brand new guys. Okie dokie. We got books. My book. The page of the day. 1, 7. That's 7. 4.
Thank you. You should be sorry. You should be very, very sorry.
174. Talking about some funny Russian people today. You all ready? All good? Baller. Okay. Talking about Russian people and the history of Russia. But before we do that, we gotta kind of set the stage. Russia wasn't always that humongous country. Is that red? That's orange. Before any of this takes place, this was all like conquered by the Mongols, the Mongol Empire. We vaguely know about the Mongols. Yeah, horse lords conquered basically all of Asia, all of the Russian area. Then obviously the Mongols fall, and that's when we kind of step into the picture with the Russians. They have what's called what they call the Principality of Moscow. And it's just kind of the area around the city of Moscow. There's a few princes. There's Ivan III and his son Vasily. Not super duper notable, but they do culminate in a guy named Ivan IV. Ivan's also known as the Terrible. Generally, by the name, do we think he's a good guy? Probably not. I mean, that's what the Terrible says. Should I go on a side tangent? Sure. Have a little side tangent. So I really like words. Think about me. I like words. So when you hear, we've covered a lot of people who are the great or the terrible. What we think those words mean, like the great obviously means good, right? But not when you're talking about names. Back then, the word the terrible really just kind of meant like the fearful, or like the one who is like scary. And the great really just meant like someone who was super significant. But we will come to find out that Ivan was also a pretty terrible person. But he comes onto the throne at the ripe age of 3. His mother's poisoned. We'll get to that. And by the time he is 16, he's decided, I don't want to be a prince anymore, right? His father and his grandfather are all princes of Moscow. I don't want to be a prince. I want to be what's called a czar, coming from the word Caesar. Your book has it spelled C-Z-A-R. I wrote up here, it's also, if you ever hear this, it's also spelled T-S-A-R. They're the same word, it's just the differences in languages. But it basically means king. You can think of it as the word king. But Ivan proclaims himself czar, and he rules for like 50 years. His rule can be split up into 2 like distinct periods. These are his good and bad period, and your book kind of does my boy Ivan dirty. They give his good period a single sentence, and they give his bad period a full paragraph. Actually, 2 paragraphs. Do him dirty like that. Why can't I do that to Ivan? Basically, during his good period, he expands, conquers tons of stuff. You can see on the map. On the map on 176, he conquers all the purple. he conquers all this stuff, and there are tons of people living here, and this is all brand new territory. The Mongols just came in and conquered this area. There's tons of different people groups in this area. There's kind of like Slavic peoples. There's the people of Moscow. There's still a lot of Mongol horse lords in this area. There are even Vikings. They're the remnants of Vikings in this area. And these people don't speak, they have different gods, different languages. They don't work together. They don't even talk to each other. So during his good period, for these 13 years, he really spends a lot of the time trying to kind of bring everyone together. He'll conquer you, then he'll say, okay, well, now you're Orthodox Christian, and you speak Russian, and we need to follow our laws, and then he'll build a road and help us all link together, kind of. That's his good period. He generally kind of creates Russian, how we think about it. The idea of what is a Russian kind of comes from Ivan the Terrible. But then he slips into his bad period. Do we know what causes him to slip into his bad period? One big life event?
His wife's dead.
Yeah, his wife gets poisoned. And then he spends the rest of his life kind of crashing out. But he believes that his mother and now his wife were both poisoned by the nobles around him. So he gets super duper paranoid and begins to kind of go a little crazy. And he decides that he doesn't want to be poisoned. So he creates a whole secret army to go to the people he doesn't like and people who might betray him and disappear them. Kills quite a lot of pretty important people in Russia, just because, well, they spoke out against him. So naturally, are you going to have a problem with this dude? Are you going to talk out against him? Are you going to disobey him? Probably not. I mean, he's going to have his secret army kill you. All of this kind of culminates in a kind of a fit of rage. He beat his eldest son to death, which not a cool move. I wouldn't do that personally. That kind of sucks. You can even look at him like, that was him. But
How did this guy last so long?
because he was super paranoid. He had this secret army. No one would try to stop him or do anything against him. And so they just let him do whatever he wanted, basically. But yeah, look at this fun fella, right? Wouldn't you want to party with him? He's like a chill guy, right?
Looks like Jafar.
He does kind of look like Jafar. I haven't put that together till right now. Yeah, I see it. But yeah, he beat his eldest son to death. But then he, as most people do, he died. Then his youngest son took over. His youngest son is pretty renowned to be a kind of a terrible leader. He was thought to be quite a horrible czar. It's been looked at that this eldest son, this succeeding son, I think it was him. Yeah, his name is Theodore. It's been thought of that he probably had a lot of mental disabilities, and he couldn't speak well. And he was pretty slow. In modern times, we would probably have him evaluated and taken care of, but we're in the 1500s, so they just said, "Oh, this dude's terrible. Let's kill him." He dies, and this guy doesn't have a kid, so there's no one in line to take the throne. So all of the boyars, which are there were duke or whatever, they all get around and elect this guy Michael Romanov to take power. So now let's flip to our little worksheet here. Cover 1 to 3. Who was the first czar? Ivan the Fourth. What happened to what was so special about his good period?
He expanded, conquers, stuff in
Yeah, certainly. He expanded, conquered. He kind of the analogy I've been using in the past classes. He kind of built the foundation. right? He didn't do the flashy work. He didn't build the whole house, but he built a solid foundation. He defined what is Russian, and we will see people expand on that. What happened during his bad period? Yeah. He just started killing a lot of his enemies. Anyone who challenged him, you're dead. Or disappeared, sorry. So what was the significance of him, right? He gets what is that? A little under a page. Why is he kind of important?
Kind of started it all.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. He started it all. He's the first one to come around and decide that Russia could be something. But then his family line ends with his son. Family line's over. They elect a guy named Michael Romanov. Little spoiler alert for the future. The Romanovs will be in power of Russia for the next 304 years. They will be in power from Michael all the way to World War I, when the Russian Empire collapses. So it's a pretty long stretch of time for one family to be in charge of everything. Then, between Ivan and our next guy, there's a handful of not super duper important Romanovs. Generally, the kind of vibe over the next 90 years is that they're just going to keep conquering and going east. Right? If we look at the map, if we look on actually the map on 176, right? In the next 80, 90 years, they gain all of the yellow. And so they, just kind of keep conquering until they hit the sea. And during this time of a few not notable rulers, there starts to be a lot of differences between East and West, right? The rest of Europe is off, doing the Enlightenment and doing the Reformation and having a bunch of wars and gaining all this new technology. And then Russia's just kind of over here in our little bubble. They don't change all that much. And so there's a pretty solid gap between Europeans and Russians. This gap is because of a few things. Right? We know from the Reformation that in Europe we had Catholicism, Protestantism. Well, the Russians kind of take a third option, and they go Orthodox Christianity. The differences aren't super noticeable, but to people at the time, they're viewed as like heathens and heretics who worship the false religion or whatever. They also still use serfdom in Russia. Does anyone know what a serf is at this time? It's not when you crush a blade. Spoiler. Serfdom is, I have written here, it's basically just slavery with extra steps. To make a real long story short, I don't own you, but I own the land, and you're forced to work the land. In this whole 1500s era, it had gone out of style in Europe, where people were actually being paid for their work. But no, the Russians love it, and so that kind of also continues to widen the gap. Finally, the Russians had a lot worse technology. Their guns were generally worse. Plenty of their other household technology was generally worse. And so we can see that the Russians are kind of lagging behind the rest of Europe here. But then, in 1696, a guy named Peter the Great takes charge. I think we got a picture of him. That's Peter right here. This is a lot better than the picture in the book. Like I said, last guy's picture in the book looks like a Neanderthal. But this looks like a pretty cool dude. But Peter takes charge, sees this gap forming, and his entire reign, right, the next, seriously, 3 pages of the book will be spent trying to close this gap, trying to bring Russia up with the rest of Europe. So now covering 4, 5, 6, what happened in that 80-year span between Ivan and Peter. Got more land. Anything else notable? Something, yeah. stone. Yeah, the Russians expanded a whole bunch. This gap kind of widened. What were some of the differences in this gap that I listed here between Russia and Europe? They're Orthodox Christian, big one. Their technology was generally pretty crappy. And they had effectively slavery with extra steps. Yeah, totally. And so, what was unique about Peter? Why is he called the Great? What was his whole grand idea? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he wanted to westernize. So, Peter comes into power and decides that he wanted to go on. He goes on basically a really long vacation. He calls it the Grand Embassy, where he heads to Europe and wants to study their traditions. He heads to England and a lot of the German states. And during this time, he falls in love with everything German. He loves their buildings. He loves their technology. He even likes their religion. He just loves everything about. He loves their government. He loves everything about Germany at this time. And this will be a big theme, that he really wants to make Russia look pretty German. Getting on to 176 now. Peter comes back from his grand embassy, basically vacation, and decides, you know what, it's really time to hit the grindstone and actually start making some real changes. And so he goes through a laundry list of reforms to the Russian system. He builds a humongous army. He hires Prussians that we talked about on Friday. He hires them to come in and train up all of his soldiers and train all of his generals, and this is pretty successful. He kind of abolishes the church a little bit, right? At this time, the Orthodox Church, right, with their priests, they were separate from the Russian government, separate from Peter. He didn't like that. They were getting in his way, so he just took them over. He created a bunch of new nobles who would be friends with him and just say yes to whatever he wanted, create a bunch of yes men. He also he made the first newspaper, and it was controlled by him personally. He edited the issues. He kind of told them what to write about. Do we think they're going to say anything bad about him? Probably not. No, I mean he's the one writing all this. He's not going to write, oh, this dude sucks. He forced nobles to kind of abandon their clothes and abandon the way they dressed in favor of German clothes. If we look on 178, you can see how traditional dress was. They would wear long fur coats and kind of bushy fur hats. He said, nope, you're gonna wear a suit. You're gonna look nice. You're gonna look nice and German. People did not like this. People were not a big fan of being told how to dress. He also forced families to give up their children, and if you were a prestigious family, he would say, "Hey, your son, we're gonna go send him off to England, so that way he could learn. He could go study at an English college, and then he'll bring back some knowledge. He'll bring back some traditional European values." Again, people are not fans of when you take their kids and send them to a different country. Don't like that. I couldn't tell you why people don't like that, but they don't. He also brought the potato over to Russia. Kind of on another little side tangent. What a journey the potato has had. I know you guys covered it earlier, but potato comes from Central America, and it's now being eaten in Siberia. Crazy, right? But he does all these things, and they are all pretty unpopular. Would you guys be a fan of any of this? You're telling me if I came in here, told you all your clothes were wrong, all your traditions were wrong, and you got to go You have to go somewhere else, whole different country, and be re-educated. Yeah. You guys wouldn't like that? What? That's crazy. No, they hate this. He does all this. No one likes it. But then he makes a decision that his big move, like the big final thing to really solidify this, is going to be to build a city. He goes to war with Sweden for 21 years. It is a very, very bloody, kind of really gruesome war. But eventually he wins, and his ultimate grand, super big prize for this 21-year-long war is like a big swamp. And that's it. Not a good piece of land. I wouldn't want that. But he decides this is a perfect spot for him to build his new city. He calls it St. Petersburg, after himself. And if we look on 176 and zoom in right into the west, right in the northwest here, in an orange blob, you'll see St. Petersburg. It's right on the Baltic Sea. Why is this location important? Right, it's right on a sea. Why is that important? Why does he want to build a city here? What'd you say? For a navy, yeah, he builds a pretty big, strong navy. Better question: Why can't he wants to connect with Europe? He wants to get trade from Europe. Wants to build his navy. Why can't he just do it on the entire coastline in the Arctic Ocean? And if we look, they have literally the entire Arctic Ocean coast. Why can't you just put it there? No one's up there? Is it warm in the Arctic? No, it's all ice. Ships can't go on ice. I don't know much about ships. They can't go on ice. But at least in the Baltic, during the summers, it's pretty warm. So you can do trade there. So he creates St. Petersburg. He forces a bunch of nobles to move there. Kind of just says, hey, move here or you're dead. Again, not a good guy. As he's building this literally in a swamp, in the cold. And so disease is crazy. Tons of people get like frostbite and have to have limbs amputated. It says in your book, up to 100,000 serfs, basically slaves, die building his city. He bankrupts the government, pouring all of the money and 100,000 people and all of his time into building a city in a swamp. The city itself is very, very German. You can even see kind of a fun little contrast. We look at the map, we see towns with the name of, Azov, Tominsk, Irkutsk. What is that? I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that last one. But pretty Russian-sounding cities. And then we have St. Petersburg. That doesn't sound right. That's not Russian. And that was the goal. He's really building a German. Covering now 7, 8, 9. Why were people against Peter? Why didn't they like him? Yeah, he tried to change everything. Do you guys like change? I'm not a big fan of when someone comes in and tells me to change everything. Why was St. Petersburg so important? Right? He bankrupted the government, killed 100,000 people. Why is it important? For trade? Good one. Anyone else? Chime in? Yeah, trade. I mean, he wanted to trade with the rest of Europe. He wanted to link us. We wanted to link Russia to England and Germany and France. We wanted to get their stuff and get English, French, and German people to move in. So yeah, he really wanted it for trade to move people around. And just like we talked about with Ivan, right? Ivan got a little less than a page. Peter gets 1, 2, 3 full pages. Why are you Yeah, he modernized Russia. After Peter, Russia will become like a European country. Before it was just like, oh yeah, we have Europe over here, and then I guess like Russia, whatever, they're also over there. Who cares? But after Peter, you will see Russia become a lot more important in politics. We'll see during when you guys remember the French Revolution, you'll see Russia plays a pretty big part in that. When you cover the Napoleonic Empire, Russia plays a pretty big part in toppling Napoleon. After Peter, they will begin to be pretty important on the world stage. Even right now, I mean, is Russia a part of Europe? They're pretty important. They're currently in a war. They're still pretty important players. That's all thanks to Peter. Right? If Ivan had his way and Peter was out of the picture, then they would just be somewhere over there. Who cares? So far, we've seen, right, I think off the top of my head, we've covered 4 absolutist rulers. Spanish, French, German. Yeah, 4. So you guys should be able to identify absolutism. You guys know what absolutism is. How does Peter's reign is like a great example of what an absolutist monarch does. How so? Tries to control everything? Is there anyone in his way? No, not really. No one likes this. No one likes what he's doing. The people don't like it. The nobles don't like it. The only one who likes what Peter's doing is Peter. Well, does anyone stop him? No. He is 100% full control. Luckily for Russia, Peter was pretty successful. He did a pretty good job. But kind of setting up for tomorrow's lesson, what if he wasn't successful? What if he just came in and did all these things and no one adapted it? Would he be the great? No. He'd be some dude who came in, took a holiday in Germany, and tried to make tons of changes no one liked, and bankrupted the government, and killed 100,000 people. Right? He would be hated. Right? And that's kind of the thing about absolute monarchs is that, it's one dude with full control. If he's bad, kind of sucks. If he's good, yay! Then that's where we get to England and their fight against absolutism. I gotta collect your little worksheets. Again, don't worry about them being graded. I cannot grade things. Oh, it doesn't matter. Again, I'm not a real teacher, so I can't grade things.
You have doodles on yours too. Thank you. I wish you could never utter this sentence again. That's what I want.
I gotta see if it's actually recorded. If this didn't record, I will cry.
Yeah, I think